Chapter 9, More versus Less. The battle of more versus less in drum set performance and drumline design is old and will never end, because art is subjective. While knowing when to choose either less or more for a musical application seems like common sense, it can be very difficult. While keeping the groove is typically a main responsibility of any gig, a great entertainer knows that opportunities do happen when he or she can turn into a magical superhero. While the following advice might not work every time for everyone, this advice should be generally helpful. It's practical for me to discuss the battle between more and less by discussing how to respect the relationships that keep the gigs coming in, and not by the density of grooves and fills. I find 3 rules very important regarding more versus less in various musical situations. 1. Obey your boss. 2. Work well with partners. 3. Manage your employees. It's a matter of respecting everyone that has money at risk. 1. Obey your boss. Whoever is paying you has the right to tell you what to do on the job because it is their dream and not yours. If you are in a professional paying situation, you must do what you are told or take a risk of losing your job and stressing out over how you are going to pay your bills. Every relationship, big and small, in this business of music counts very much. So nurture every single one. The following bits of advice derived from various gigs I have had the pleasure of learning from over the years, as well as from other successful band leaders I have had the pleasure of speaking with or learning with. Here are some professional situations in which I can give some advice. A. Professional band gigs. If you are joining a highly organized professional band that may do sophisticated nightclubs, corporate events, weddings, etc., you need to understand that the band leader probably has a lot of money and time invested into his or her organization and has a very high standard that he or she will insist that you follow so that his or her investment will not be damaged due to unprofessionalism such as performance deficiencies and conduct issues. A motivated band leader will not allow damage to their investment, which would cause a lack of referred gigs. Referred gigs are the lifeblood of a motivated band leader because without them, no money will come into the band leader's business account, and then the band leader cannot pay his musicians. And then he will lose the musicians because they will need to make a living and will find work elsewhere. If the band leader's musicians find work elsewhere, the band leader will start to lose on his investment right away and will suffer a financial loss because his product was damaged. So as you can see, your actions have direct effects on your boss. If you are suspected of damaging the leader's investment, you will be warned of this in some way. And if you don't make an immediate reparation, you will most likely be replaced. With this in mind, for this type of gig, do not be a superhero, ever. Do not be a superhero. Play what's needed to make your band leader happy, because when they are happy, he or she knows his or her clients are happy. Obnoxious fills and drum solos are not suited for this type of gig unless asked, and then it is recommended to ask the leader what they would find effective in a solo. Do this when you're hired for the gig, not the second you are asked right on stage. If the leader asks you to do a solo on the spot, it's a miracle because he must know that the room is in a frenzy and he wants to top it off with a pulse-driven drum solo. In these times, it's important to remember that dancing is what keeps these people on the floor because they feel good and they are having a good time. If the people are having a great time, they will stay longer and drink more, putting more money into the venue owner's pocket, which will probably keep you coming back for more gigs. If you have a solo, do not change the pulse unless you can tell by looking into the eyes of the crowd that more than 85% of the customers in front of you are screaming for you to break free. If this happens, then feel free to take them on a trip of exciting faster tempos and colors. If you choose to leave them in the dust with a crazy display of academic prowess, make sure that you make the dust cloud so thick with intense diversity that they will never forget you, and don't make it last longer than the excitement of the crowd. Leave them hungry for more. During all of this, you must pay real close attention to the crowd and their movement. If they remain dancing, great. If they rush the stage, fantastic. Give them more. If they head to sit down, signal the band that you will wrap up your solo right away and kick into the next tune. There is nothing worse than having a room full of people dancing, having a great time, interrupted by a drum solo that does not fit the set. They don't want to hear blazing fast cheeseverts with your feet. Keep them moving with trance-inducing beats and your own color to keep it fresh. Dancing and drumming synergize each other, and that very bond must be nurtured very carefully. The most important aspect of the gig is to groove, by digging deep into the pocket with the bass player, or sequencer, or click. Checking the tempos by always feeling if the singer is comfortable and communicating with your band leader, all with a smile. You can make yourself more useful and valuable to the band leader by remembering to always help them lug their equipment, set up their equipment, such as the PA and lighting, before each of the shows, and ask what else you can do before the show. Because you should always show up early every time to see what you can do to make yourself more valuable. Get into a routine of helping the band leader, and it will help ensure that they will pay you correctly after every gig. Doing these extra chores for your boss should not be seen as kissing their behind, but be seen as your added value to the band. When your leader asks you to learn new songs, learn them. Not just the best you can, but learn them cold right away, like you have known them for years. This is your bread and butter, so take all the time you need to do so by making whatever charts are needed for you to do your job. In this gig, you are the timekeeper. Also, try to play as close to the original covers as possible, unless you are told to add your own unique personality into it. More times than not in cover bands, you are being paid to be a carbon copy of every drummer in every band you represent that night. Cover bands might not be the most artistically sound gig, but they do pay well at times. B. Professional theater gig. If you are hired for a theater gig, just read the music and do what's needed to make yourself sound like the original drummer from the original Broadway recording, unless instructed by the musical director otherwise. The owner of the theater lives off of the profits from ticket sales, and you must understand this. The owner hires the musical director, otherwise known as the MD, and has regular meetings with him to talk about various aspects of the preparation and run of the show. Check your ego at the door and do what is needed to make the overall production as great as possible. Being in the pit can sometimes put you in a very exposed area where a lot of people can see you in your stain-free, non-wrinkled, dry-cleaned tuxedo. And sometimes you'll be performing literally up high on a shelf where nobody can see you, in a hole in the wall. At that point, you can dress however you want. In this type of gig, it is very easy to turn into an autopilot drummer, with most of the show memorized. But try to avoid this at all costs, because you might and probably will miss corrections from the musical director, or lose your sensitivity to the changes with a mistake that may happen from the actors and cause the MD to change and what he is doing to lead the band. You can make this job very exciting by getting into the plot of the musical and learning the various characters. Get emotionally deep into your show and don't feel embarrassed because you won't be the only one. Always have a pencil on you and network with any and all subs that you play with in order to become more in demand. For this type of gig, your consistency is important, but the role of the timekeeper is often the musical director, and many times throughout a show, You may have to change your listening points to different instrumentalists, and even the cues given to you on stage by the cast. Just pay attention, because mastering a musical production means learning a lot of changes every night. The show is never truly finished. If you really pay attention to every show, you'll notice that something is always slightly different, and if you don't adapt quickly, problems may arise. Considering that your name will be seen by hundreds of guests every show, this is an opportunity you don't want to have taken away from you. The networking from this type of gig is a fantastic one. C. Professional cruise ship gigs. This gig is a real blast if you can audition into it. A cruise ship often has multiple drummers working for several different ensembles on the ship. The main stage drummer has the hardest responsibilities out of all of them. I held this honor before, and it was the hardest and one of the most self-rewarding gigs I have ever had. The shows are constantly changing, and you have to be a professional reader, with diverse influences to draw from. One afternoon you can be playing jazz, and the same night you are with a guest artist playing banjo so fast that you are basically playing punk and metal beats along with him, sometimes loud and sometimes soft. You have to know how to be submissive, with challenging sequencer programs and click tracks. Auditioning for a cruise ship gig is a challenge, but if your reading is precise, you can play various styles, and you know how to adapt to crazy last-second changes, you might be able to get into this line of work. Sometimes, the curtain remains closed 5 minutes after the show is supposed to start, with the guest artist showing up late and having no time for rehearsal, barely having enough time to thumb through the charts, and you have to pull off a flawless show, sight reading your butt off. For the cruise ship gig, play what's only needed, because after 3 warnings, called pins, performance improvement notices, you may be sent home at your expense, and airfare can be quite expensive if you are halfway across the world. Not to mention, you have to often pay for your replacement's airfare and a few days' salary. I have heard from a few people that got booted for various reasons and told me that dismissal can be very expensive. Your boss will be the musical director, and his boss is the cruise director. Your MD will be under a lot of stress to pull off top-notch entertainment for the thousands of guests. So don't be a reason to cause additional stress. You can play about 4 shows a day, all with different styles. So you need to be more than on top of your game to pull this gig off without a hitch. One true but comical bit of advice. When the seas are rough, keep your eye on your cymbals, especially if they are cracked, because they will move. I got a pretty nasty cut one night from a cymbal choke that went wrong, and I bled all over my drums and music. True story. D. Professional amusement park gigs. This can be a really fun gig to have, whether you are playing drum set, or in a small marching band, or percussion ensemble, or any other ensemble which requires you to use your percussion skills. Just make sure you look like you are having fun and smile a lot, because if you don't appear that you're being entertained by your group, why should others be? Your immediate manager will probably be a fellow veteran of the band, so just be on their good side at all costs, and all should go well. So they should have nothing negative to report to the entertainment director for the park. There will be some times you can add your own flair, but be sure to ask first. Maybe your manager will tell you one day just to go for it. Professional studio gigs. If you get a call to be a studio drummer, this by all means is not, I repeat, not a chance to be a superhero drummer. Do what you are told, and always have the mentality of a well-behaved child in an expensive china shop. Unless otherwise stated in advance, your opinion doesn't count and is not wanted. You are being paid good money to help the artist and producer get certain ideas out of their heads and into your head, out to your hands and feet, through the drums, into the mics, and then into the control room for the engineer to manipulate. Number 2, work well with partners. These professional gigs include situations in which you may inject your own input by showcasing your talents more. These include startup cover bands, jam bands, and other investment opportunities. Some jazz and funk bands, as well as progressive acts, may require you to pay attention to what extra you can add to the group to make it unique and stick out. Another reason you may do this is because in most cases you are an equal partner in the relationship with an equal share in the organization as far as how much time and money is invested in. Just be aware that you may be forced into a buyout agreement if they don't like you. In this type of situation, you may play whatever you want as long as it's not musically abusive to your partners. Because you are an equal partner, it's partly your gig, your dream, so shine. Shine, shine, and by all means be a superhero if your partners support that. Just make sure you help your partner shine during their moments of glory. Communication is key in dealing with partners. Keeping an open line of communication can keep a heavy investment from turning into a disaster in which animosities are created and money and time are lost. Don't get taken advantage of in an equal partnership. If for some reason a band states that they want to kick you out, or they make things so difficult for you that you must voluntarily leave, you must let them know that they are in breach and must provide a remedy, or you have the right to sue for damages. I am not a lawyer, but this is advice that works for me and other people I work with. If you have been with the band from what you perceive as the start, you are an original investor in a business enterprise. If you have logged your invested time and money on paper, that is your investment. And if you are a professional, you got into the band with the intent of not only making back your investment, but making a profit from which to supplement your total income. With this in mind, if you are voted out, they have to buy you out. Otherwise, you will be taken advantage of, and your former bandmates will be stealing from you, which is a crime. Consult a lawyer if this happens and sue, or read up and represent yourself. While you can represent yourself in court to avoid expensive legal fees, it is very easy for an experienced trial attorney to legally screw you and play games with your head in front of the judge for their own recreation. If you need to represent yourself in court, go slow, respect the judge, ask a question every time you don't understand something, and come over prepared. If you don't place value on your services, who else should and why? Stand up for yourself in court. You might not win, as good, hardworking people get legally screwed all the time, but you will keep your self-respect and learn for the next time you are in court. Some people think that people that sue are money hungry and should not be worked with. However, sometimes people sue for legit reasons, and professionals will respect you if your claim is legit and will want to work with you if they know you are serious about time and money as a professional musician. 3. Manage your employees. When you pay for all the expenses related to a professional venture, you are the owner, and all people working with you are actually working for you. They are your employees and must be treated with the utmost respect. However, with this in mind, they must be managed well, or you and your employees are going to lose a lot of time and money. There is a time to be a friend, and then you have to be the leader. If you have your own group, you can play whatever you want at any time, and everyone else's job is to support you. Be warned if your group is too eccentric and you can't get any bookings, or you'll lose your employees and your investment. Having your own group has a lot of responsibilities, including collecting your pay and dispersing it to your employees. Never discuss your finances with your employees, or you run the risk of being taken advantage of. And while they might be happy because you are paying them great, you won't have as much as you should to recoup on your heavy investment. Always treat your employees as you want to be treated.